What does courage in the face of intense social pressure look like? Well, there's a great example in Luke chapter 23, and that's what we're taking a look at for our chapter of the day. We're going to read verse 50 through 54, but I'd encourage you to read the entire chapter. Here's what it says. Now, there was a man named Joseph, a member of the council, a good and upright man, who had not consented to their decision and action. He came from the Judean town of Arimathea, and he was waiting for the kingdom of God. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body. Then he took it down, wrapped it in linen cloth, and placed it in a tomb cut in the rock, one in which no one had yet been laid. It was the preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. So these verses clearly take place after Jesus' crucifixion. And I am always amazed at when you have a little historical background, how it brings a story into really a greater depth of understanding. And so these verses start out by saying that this man named Joseph was a member of the council. And so what is the council? Well, the council is oftentimes also called the Sanhedrin. And that is the ruling authority where local Judean affairs were decided. And it was made up of both Pharisees and Sadducees. And all major cities would have had these to really handle Jewish affairs, although they're still subject to Roman rule. So this is really interesting. In Luke 22, verse 66, it tells us that both teachers of the law and chief priests were part of the Sanhedrin, or the council. So that means that it's a body of Jewish leaders made up of both Pharisees and Sadducees. And so Joseph was a part of this Jewish ruling body. This is also the same council that earlier that day had convicted Jesus and brought him before Pilate to be crucified. And I think that's why Luke makes this distinction to say that Joseph was a good and upright man, and he had not consented to their decision and action. He must not have even been at the proceedings, because both Luke and Mark point out that the whole council had called for Jesus' death. So he could not have been present and in that time frame. But here is what's really interesting. Joseph goes to Pilate and asks for Jesus' body, even though all of his peers had asked for the death of Jesus and his execution. That had to have been an enormous amount of social pressure on Joseph. And yet, he had the boldness and the courage to go against that social pressure and to go and bury Jesus after his death. How did he know that Jesus was worth sticking his neck out for? Well, I think it states his motivation or his reasoning in verse 51, and it says this. He was waiting for the kingdom of God. Joseph recognized Jesus as the Messiah, the one who ushered in the coming age and brought with him the kingdom of God here on earth. I pray that we could be people like Joseph of Arimathea, that we would have the courage to stand in the right and stand up for what is good and true in the face of social pressure, and that we would be constantly on the lookout for God's kingdom and how he's at work in the world, and join him, join God in his countercultural movement.